everyone, it's me, Jen, and this week I'm doing something a little different. For starters, I have notes on what I'm saying. And another thing is that there is no animatic footage this week. It's not that I didn't do anything, I did. It's just that I want to talk a bit about writing this week. And I feel like this is a good time to do it, and I know this is going to be a bit long. So just bear with me. And if you don't mind me talking on and on about things, hey, this is a video for you. So, first off, I want to explain Distant Land a little further on what I want to do with it. Firstly, this is a kind of cartoon where you have morals throughout it. Not just at the end, but the themes are morals. But the main theme, and typically the moral surrounding that theme, is don't let fear control you. Which I think is a very important thing to know, no matter what kind of fear it is. And specifically, I'm talking about 3 types of fear off the top of my head, namely anxiety, fear of the unknown, and prejudice. Now, anxiety is something I've experienced personally. I've had some social anxieties over the years. It wasn't like terrible, like I couldn't talk to anybody or was afraid to go outside, but I just didn't trust anybody. I thought that everybody was out to get me somehow, that I was just lesser or wrong compared to them, and they were looking to exploit that. And I want to tackle how some people deal with anxiety and different kinds of anxiety. Like, I know some people rely on routine and structure in order to keep them going. And some get aggressive when things don't go their way because things are falling out of their control, and it scares them when things fall out of their control. And then there's the kinds that bottle it up and keep it inside, letting it build and build until they just can't take it anymore. And they become a wreck. Now, I'm not a psychologist or anything, but this is just what I know about anxiety. Second thing is the fear of the unknown, which is the biggest primal fear, the root of most other fears, I believe. Like, just all sorts of scary thoughts, of the dark, of strangers, of death itself. Those are all stemmed from the fear of the unknown. And the fear of the unknown and a lot of ambiguity is what I want to write about. A lot of mystery and mysterious things. And that especially goes for moral ambiguity, because that's a lot of fun to write. Writing about good people who do or have done bad things for good reasons. And also bad people who want to strive for the greater good. And then there's just characters that are neutral. They've got their own agendas, go their own way. That's also fascinating to write, and I don't see that a lot, especially in kids' media, where they're not especially good. They don't help the protagonist that much, and they're not antagonists either. They just are there, and they contribute things to the plot, whether it suits them or not. And then there's prejudice. Now, I know what you might be thinking, and it's a tough thing to talk about. And oftentimes, when you talk about prejudice, it goes into a lot of ideological garbage. So I'm going to be as objective as possible when talking about this. Because if I'm going to tackle this subject, I don't want it to be cliche. Because prejudice is a very big form of fear. The fear of the other. And I'm tired of stories, especially kids' stories, that handle prejudice when there's just one good side and one bad side. Just one side definitively good, one side definitively bad, except for the one main protagonist from the bad side who realizes, hey, the other side isn't so bad. I was wrong all along. And then he wasn't racist anymore. No, that's not the story I'm going to tell here. In fact, there's not even any racism involved, really, unless you want to read into little subtexts. And I don't want to get all that pretentious here, just stating my thoughts. Now, in the story, there are two specific sides. We've got humans and we got monsters. And then there's some characters that are neither human nor monster, but they're kind of just choose their own side. Again, see the neutrals. Now, humans are scared of monsters because some monsters kill humans for food, especially human children, because they're easy. An easy meal for especially lazy, bloodthirsty monsters. And monsters are scared of humans because humans hunt them in retaliation, but they also kill indiscriminately. A monster's a monster to them, a potential threat. So both sides have good reason for being afraid of each other and being violent towards each other, because the violence is what makes more violence. I know, I'm getting just so deep here tonight. Anyway, I'm going to speed this along and get on to talking about characters, which I think you'll find more interesting, or at least I'll hope you'll find more interesting, other than my ramblings of trying to be so deep and philosophical. Hey. So, our first character here is Catherine, the main protagonist. And she's a very serious and rigid little girl. And she can get a little manic sometimes if she gets worked up enough. The things start going out of whack because she's one of those kinds of people who relies on a rigid structure in order to live. And when things don't go her way, she can get a bit aggressive, highly aggressive even, which is not something you'd expect out of a little refined lady. But it all has to do with her upbringing. Catherine is someone who wants to be a genius, it's because her family is known for this swath of prodigies and geniuses, and since she wasn't born a prodigy, she has to rely on becoming a genius instead, which is a huge task of itself, and she doesn't do it for herself, no. She's doing it to please her mother, a woman who is never pleased with her, because she sees Catherine as a mistake. I don't want to get too far into that, because spoilers. And it ended up sucking the childhood right out of her. She is a child trying to be an adult. And she doesn't entirely know how the world works, which is why she's failing at being an adult. And this character was difficult to write because she started out very, very bland. Just sort of your typical, nice, kind of shy, young female protagonist. it was just boring, in my opinion. And I had to just gut that out and completely rewrite her. And that's when I developed this word method of making characters, sort of a foundation. You pick one word to describe a personality. In Catherine's case, it was serious. And then you pick 3 words that go with, like refined, clever, and rigid. And then you have to pick an opposite word. In this case, aggressive. And then from there, things just kind of build themselves as you go along. And it also helped to put Van Von Feng in there because he is Catherine's opposite. They're both striving for the same goal, but at the same time, they're 2 very different personalities who have to learn very different lessons based off of each other. Next character is Hop Hop, my little Bun Bun. He is comic relief. He's a stuffed rabbit with the mind of a 6-year-old boy, essentially. He's playful, naive, but obedient. He says the first thing that pops into his head and takes things very literally. At the same time, he doesn't think much with his head, but with his heart. He's an emotional thinker, bleeding heart, sympathetic towards everyone. He just wants to give the world a hug, pretty much. Now, the difficulty with writing him is that he can go wrong fast. Characters like him go wrong so easily. The first way I can think of off the top of my head is the loud and obnoxious kind of comic relief. You've seen them. They just always shouting things, and they make others miserable intentionally. They don't get the payback at the end that they deserve because, hey, they're funny, therefore you have to forgive every little thing they do. And of course, the bad non sequitur humor of, lol, so random. Sorry, I have to whisper a bit. I think my dad's going to bed, so yeah, keeping this quiet right now. And anyway, the other way this character can go wrong is the ain't that precious kind of writing. You know, those kinds of kid characters that are put there to relate to the younger audience. They're just there to spew catchphrases and sell merchandise. I also see this kind of trope in anime too, where they have a mascot little critter or a young kid that has that annoying verbal tick, like they're trying desperately hard to be Pikachu. And these characters just aren't funny, ever. Because they're not characters. They're a marketing ploy. They're manipulating you into buying toys. And that's just annoying in and of itself. The other way, other than being just loud and obnoxious for the sake of being loud and obnoxious. So, it's really the obedient character trait that saved him from being one of these 2 categories. Because he knows when to shut up, saving him from being loud and obnoxious. Just one look from Catherine and whoop, he's done. And it saves him from the ain't that precious kind of category, because if you notice with a lot of these ain't that precious characters, that they just don't have flaws. And the obedience is a flaw, because he can't assert himself. He can't tell Catherine that he wants his way sometimes, because Catherine is the boss as far as he's concerned. And also, writing kid characters is hard, because you don't want them to be too bratty unless they're supposed to be antagonistic and just annoying brats that you want to smack across the face. And you don't want them to be too perfect either, because that's annoying. Because they don't act like children. You've got to find that sort of balance, because kids can be annoying sometimes. But at the same time, you got to make them likable enough that you don't want to smack them across the face. And another thing that annoys me about people who write kid characters wrong is when they write a character that acts too young for their age. Like, when a 6-year-old is acting like a 3-year-old, you just start wondering, okay, is this character mentally challenged? Is that it? I don't know. I mean, it can work better the opposite way, actually. When you write a kid character a bit older, it can be a bit charming, actually, like the Peanuts gang, where they talk about all these grown-up subjects that they really shouldn't know, but they put this kid logic spin on it, which makes it cuter. And that's another thing I have to talk about is kid logic. Like, kids don't think like adults do. They're very emotional in the way they act. They don't know the world like we do. So something scary to an adult might not register for a kid as scary right away. And what seems silly to an adult might be a big deal to a kid. It's that sort of thing you have to keep in mind when writing children. And finally, we have our main villain, Jacko. He is a phantom wolf shrouded in mystery. He has this whole pack of shadow beasts at his disposal, and he feeds off of fear. Now, Jacko may not be able to physically attack, but he attacks your psyche. He slowly breaks you down. No matter where you go, he's there. In the mirror, he's there. When you go to sleep, he's there. And he torments you and torments you. Can change shape to become the people you love, and eats away at all of your insecurities. Until you're nothing more than a husk, in which you become a shadow beast yourself and join the pack. And the one thing about Jacko that drives his character is that he's a parasite who wants to be a predator, hence why he takes the form of a wolf. And the thing that's holding him back is his inability to physically attack, because he doesn't have a physical body. So, he wants Catherine's body. Why? Because nobody expects a little girl to do anything. They're some of the most inconspicuous people you could ever meet. You wouldn't think that, say, a little girl would come at you in the night with an axe, which is why the concept of creepy little girls is scary, because it's opposite of what you expect. Now, the difficulties of writing this character is writing good horror, which I think is about as hard as writing good comedy. Because anyone can make a scary face or add buckets of blood to something, but that doesn't make it scary. What makes it scary is that feeling of dread, atmosphere, and that bit of mystery, which is why I like ghost stories the best, because it's shrouded in mystery. You don't know what a ghost is capable of. You can't fight a ghost, and yet they can come at you at any point, especially when you're at your most vulnerable. So that about wraps up this writing thing. I'll catch you guys next week. Bye bye.